doubting our capacity, worried if we can meet what lies ahead, we long for presence, guidance. Show us your ways, a blessing of light on the way to freedom. Awed by the immensity of love, so that goodness might pass before us, and we might yet know safety. We see a cleft in the rock. Show us your glory, a blessing of refuge on the way to freedom.
Oh, freedom, come by here. Oh, freedom, come by here. Oh, freedom, come by here. Come by here. Come by here. Oh, freedom, come by here. Oh, freedom, come by here. Oh, freedom, come by here, come by here, come by here. Oh, freedom, come by here. Oh, freedom, come by here. Oh, freedom, come by here, come by here, come by here. Oh, freedom, come by here. Oh, freedom, come by here. Oh, freedom, come by here. Come by here. Come by here.
Believe me, I know what this looks like leaving, like walking away, while you stand there feeling the press of every sharp edge, every jagged corner in this fearsome hollow that holds you.
This is the ache of vision that comes only in fragments. This is the terrible wonder of glory that arrives in glimpses.
I am not here to make excuses for how it seems to turn its face from us when we most need to see it most.
This is how it finds its way to us, when we are in the place made by cleaving, the place left by what is torn apart, the fierce union that comes only in the fissures.
I want to be unafraid to turn towards this blessing that binds itself to us even in the rending.
This the blessing that freedom brings. Let us find a sacred space, a wilderness altar, a refuge where holy presence passes by, unhinging us even as it makes us whole.
Come thou fount of every blessing, tune my heart to sing thy grace. Streams of mercy never ceasing, call for songs of loudest praise. Teach me some melodious sonnet, sung by flaming tongues above. Raise a mountain fixed upon it, mount of thy redeeming love. Here I raise to thee an altar, hither by thy help I'm come, and I hope by thy good pleasure safely to arrive at home. Jesus, all
A scripture reading from the book of Exodus. Moses said to the Lord, "See, you have said to me, bring up these people, but you have not let me know whom you will send with me. You have said, I know you by name, and you have also found favor in my sight. Now, if I have found favor in your sight, show me your ways, so that I may know you and find favor in your sight. Consider, too, that this nation is your people." God said, "My presence will go with you, and I will give you rest." And Moses said to God, "If your presence will not go with you and will not carry us up from here, for how shall it be known that I have found favor in your sight, I and your people, unless you go with me? Unless you go with us. In this way we shall be distinct, I and your people, from every people on the face of the earth." The Holy One said to Moses, "I will do the very thing that you have asked, for you have found favor in my sight, and I know you by name." Moses said, "Show me your glory, I pray." And God said, "I will make all my goodness pass before you and will proclaim before you the name, the Holy One. And I will be gracious to whom I will be gracious, and I will show mercy on whom I shall show mercy." But God said, "You cannot see my face, for no one shall see me and live." See, there is a place by me where you shall stand on the rock, and while my glory passes, I will put you on a cleft of the rock, and I will cover you with my hand until I have passed by, and then I will take away my hand, and you shall see my back, but my face shall not be seen. Blessings.
And we know this place. Yes, yes. For we have glanced more times than we'd like to share into eyes that stare with nothing there behind them but an unfulfilled wish and an unconscious yearning for life, though death rests comfortably beside us at night, their moans are louder. They come to visit the guards at the gate and they stay until morning, torturing their guilt-written insides. The silent cries of the keepers are louder than the booms that come from the guns they use to occupy the space. And we know this place. For we have seen more times than we'd like to imagine bloated cadavers floating through waters of a city gone savage, foraging the land for what can be salvaged, but what can be saved when all is lost. It happened in August, 29 days in. We are now 5 days out of the only place we knew to call house and home. Few things are certain. 1, we have no food. 2, there are more bodies lying at the roadside than hot plates being distributed, or first aid being administered, or recognition as a citizen, 14th Amendment. X, refugee, check, and we know this place. Ever changing yet forever the same. Money and power and greed, the game they suck and devour the souls of the slain. What a feast for the beast at their table of shame, with napkins round necks to catch the blood that drains from the flesh they chew. It's hell to gain, and we know this place all too well. Dank with the smell of death and doom, it hovers, it smothers, no growth, no room, no pretty, no please, just gray, just gloom, just born me a hope and it died too soon, just jucking, just jiving, just living, just fools. And we know this place, decked in all its array and splendor, golden streets with good intentions, capture our attention, gadgets and inventions, pesticide food supply, flu-like symptoms, diabetic condition, a cancer in the system, health on hold. It's a pistol to the temple, run to the churches, tell realm is simple. Good works and good deeds is what equals redemption. Tell me please, Jesus never mentioned how the churchmen get extensions on freedom while children are being fondled from the altar to the streets, then back to the sanctuaries. It's kind of scary, ain't it, to know that both the prophet and the priest practice deceit, then come to the people and claim peace, peace. They come to the people and claim love, love. Where is the peace? But where is the love? Where is that balm in Gilead that can heal the wounded soul or make the half man whole? I swear we know this place. We have vowed before never again to return, but here we are. Back in the desert, dry mouth and thirsting for waters from heaven. But come, come children, rally round, and maybe together we can make a sound that'll shake the trees or rattle the ground, make strong our knees. We's a freedom bound, and we know this place. Reclaim the crown, hold on to the prize. Never put it down, be firm in the stance, no break, no bow. Gotta forward on mama, make your move now. Forward on baba, make the move now. Forward, dear children, for freedom is now.
Good morning, community. I want to invite you into a different form of sermonizing today. We are going to do kind of an interview sermon. So I'm delighted to be here with Dr. Mahsea Evans, who many of you know. Mahsea is going to share some words with us about some of the work he's been doing around spoken word and sacred space and African traditional religious folk religion. So Dr. Evans, I wonder if you might just introduce yourself a little bit for folks who might not know you.
Okay, well, peace to you all. It is such a pleasure to be back within the PSR community. As said, my name is Dr. Mahsea Evans, and my roots are here at PSR. And it doesn't matter what format, be it virtual or in the classroom setting or in the sanctuary. So I'm really happy to be here. I recognize many of you, instructing the class that, me and Dr. Fenema has been sharing for the last years, and I see a lot of people on the staff. So it is my pleasure to be able to speak with you for a few minutes, and the lesson being that if Dr. Fenema asks you to do something, you just say yes and figure out the details later.
Thank you for saying yes. So the first question I wanted to raise for you, Dr. Evans, is how do you see spoken word artists like Sunni Patterson, who we heard just now, creating spaces of encounter with the holy or cultivating sacred space through their art?
So I'm grateful that we even had this little bit of distance between watching that video and speaking now, because I cry every time. I'm still tending to my goosebumps because there's something about that performance about Sunni Patterson that was crystal clarifying to my soul, just on a soul level about what spoken word means and what it can do. Just to give a little back history, I was in spoken word communities about 20 years ago in the New York scene, this and that. So, you know, I was hitting up all the circuits and I was in communities, but I recognized that there was something more than just entertainment happening, that needs were being fulfilled on levels just deeper than whether or not someone had a hot 5-minute poem or whatever. People were experiencing healing, people were experiencing ahas, people were finding voice in their critique around what was happening to their lives. And there was something more, and it wasn't until I saw this video that it became quite clear that what is happening here is more than just, you know, art, though it is art, but it is ministry. That particular performance that you saw was done about 9 to 10 months after Katrina happened. Sunni Patterson is a New Orleans native. And as you know, many of people experience life as a refugee, leaving the city, going to places like Houston or wherever have you. So that was one of the first times that people who were part of this diaspora were coming back to New Orleans to kind of put the pieces back together again. And this was taken within a park where you had all these quite literally wearied people who have had this wilderness and are living this wilderness experience, seeing Sunni Patterson perform and offering through her work everything from giving political critique to giving religious critique, while also using the language and images of religious traditions to speak life, to speak hope, to call up, to call out. And I love the fact that she was using the images in Exodus because it kind of dovetails to our scripture today. And it caused me also to reflect about how this is ministry, is because when you see her, she's performer, but you also see preacher. You also see prophet. You also see these things. And so there was some beautiful signifying and embodying of this tradition that, though we understand it to be embedded within the church, kind of exceeds the church and kind of encapsulates something that is larger than its forms. So indeed, yes, a priestess as well. All of these functions embodied within the performance. And that's when I knew it was like this spoken word thing is a little bit different. In fact, I wrote within my thesis, I said, spoken word creates liberative spaces where Black identity and its experiences are interrogated and liberation realized in the multi-voice articulations of struggles and triumphs, the catharsis of pain, the moments of inspiration, as well as in the amens, the finger snaps, and the hand claps. In these spaces, spoken word artists are more than poets. They become modern day healers, prophets, and preachers.
Thank you. I'm curious, Mahsea, I know part of your work is also connecting this kind of spiritual leadership to Black folk religious traditions. I wonder if you might talk a little bit about that.
For sure. So one of the things that kind of stuck out with me, and this was a genesis of my work. Near the end, she even says, you know, that the type of a sound that could shake the trees. And as I was looking at that gathering, I was immediately thinking about that scene in the book and movie Beloved, when they're in the clearing. And the clearing was this space outside of the community in the woods where there was where Black folks were able to meet safely and get their spiritual needs met in rituals that were not necessarily performed within the church house, so to speak. And there's that famous passage by Morrison when she talks about summoning the community, and the men were asked to dance, and the women to cry, and the children to laugh, and how they all within this performance were able to get all jumbled up. And in the midst of all of that, Baby Suggs then offered her what they described as her big heart, but it was her folk sermon that brought healing to the people. But what it made me think about is that if you're talking about the antebellum era or post-antebellum era, Black folk always had to create these alternative spaces to get their needs met. And whether we're talking about clearings or hush harbors or you know, places like that, where we're talking about a slave cabin in the back in the middle of the night, whether we're talking about even in denominational settings where you will have the church setting, and then there's, you know, research that talked about how all of the furniture all of the pews were moved at the end, and then they will get down with, you know, a ring shout ceremony, which was a form of dance. So there was always this place where space was made sacred through performance, and that could be any space. And even when you deal with even into the quote unquote secular world, there was little differentiation between the need to go to the church house on Sunday, but make sure you go to the juke joints on Saturday nights. And it's important to speak, to sing the gospel, but it's also important to sing the blues, right? And so we have this tradition within our community where you have people who can fluidly move in and out of those worlds, because it also comes from a worldview. And this is where, again, I'm speaking about this Black folk religious tradition, where the idea of sacred was not compartmentalizing between the sacred and the secular. There is no spot where God is not, as my poet friend will say. So God's encounter can happen any place. And part of my argument is that what it necessitates this, what allows this to happen, is what you are doing in the space. And so performance becomes this vehicle to allow spirit to be made known and to do its work, especially in the context of Black lives.
You're already kind of speaking to this question a little bit, but I wonder if in our scripture for today, God and Moses co-create a space of encounter that offers both refuge and nearness. Are there ways that you see spoken word creating these kind of spaces, these spaces of encounter that offer refuge and nearness? So
I do. And not only I do, I mean, I testify to it. This is my testifying hand. So this isn't theoretical for me. In fact, so my project was entitled Spoken Word and the Creation of Sacred Space Through Ritual Performance and Imaginative Theologies. And my methodology was autoethnography. So therefore I was looking at my life as a lens and as data points, so to speak, to engage this topic. So I lived this, right? And so I remember when we first started doing spoken word, right? It was a communal event. And the first place that we met was in Bushnell Park around the tree. And we would come to the tree would ground us, we were in nature. And it was a space where people with all different backgrounds, religious beliefs, just got together and allowed sometimes even the unnamed presence of spirit to come into our assembly and do its healing work. Even that community that was created sometimes looked like us gathering on the third floor of, well, what I'm describing as a brownstone, because that sounds a little bit more fancier, but it was a multi-family home and it was a top floor, but it looked like a brownstone because it was a brown house. Anyway, and we would get together and we will not only just do poetry, but we will be vulnerable with each other. We would share our hearts, our fears, our concerns. It was an interesting time where there will be people who will be reggae, who were Rastafarian like influence, who might use a Nyabingi beat on the djembe, mixed with someone who was a Muslim or someone who came from Christian background trying to figure it all out in my mid-20s. That was me, and someone who didn't believe in any God concept. We all were doing a form of prayer and holding each other, and even cooking meals. I remember one time, couple times, where it was like before the night will end, we would be like, well, we got to eat something, because it felt like when we gather, we have to break bread, literally. And I remember we fixed rice and beans, and that became a type of communion in a way that kind of sealed that event. So whether you're talking about in what happened in a house or around a tree, or what happened in spots like the New Eurekan Poets Cafe in New York City, spoken word I will argue, in the continuum of these alternative spaces that were created by Black folk, people within Black folk religious traditions, to be about the healing of our folk. Like, you know, I talk a little bit about how within these practices, we're not concerned necessarily about orthodoxies or the right doctrine or the right words. It was more about orthopraxis. What were the type of rituals and practices that evidence or brought the presence of spirit, God's healing spirit? So with Sunni, going back to Sunni, same with Baby Suggs in Toni Morrison's novel. What made her a spiritual leader wasn't the fact that she had a collar or that she got an MDiv, though I'm all for MDivs in theological studies. I'm all in on that. But what gave her credibility was the fact that when she spoke, something happened, something moved, something shifted. And I think, you know, when I'm thinking about my experience with spoken word, those are some of the aspects that come to me.
So I think you're already speaking toward this a little bit too, but I wonder if you would say more about how you see these kinds of clefts in the rock or sacred arbors as fueling the work of social transformation.
Yeah. So a couple things. So, and this just came to me when I was listening to William do the reading in such a wonderful way. I heard something a little bit differently this time. It's a weird thing that happens in the scripture where God is doing this thing where God says, yep, I'm going to go with you. And then Moses is like, but will you go with me? And he's like, yes, yes. And there's this beautiful exchange of vulnerability. There was no judgment, but there was a sense of care that God was showing. And there's that part where God said, I will put you in this rock. There's this cleft by me that you can enter into. But more than that, it says that I'll take my hand and cover your face. Now, it could have been very easy for the text to have read, close your eyes and I'm going to go by you. I'll tell you when to open your eyes. But there's something very beautiful and even intimate around, I'm going to cover your face. It made me think about the times that I would sit in the front seat of the car and my mother will lean over. I'm wearing a seatbelt, but what is that instinct to say, I'm just going to put my arm here to make sure you're still safe? Same thing with my daughter who's 12. Whenever she feels like she want to get grown and, you know, sit in the front seat with me, there's this instinct, right? And so there's this way of, I'm here with you, Moses, and I'm here with this intimate, beautiful spirit of care that looks like touching and shielding and making sure. And I think that is part of what I'm talking about for these spaces. There is this sense that three things, actually. Number one, refuge in safety. Number two, a creative encounter with the sacred. And number three, a general spirit of care. Extravagant feeling of care. An unnecessary, over-the-top feeling of I see you-ness. A sense of your life matters so much that even though I'm telling you to close your eyes, you're going to still feel my hand flutter against your eyelids type care. And I think that can inform our ministries. Um, and and the other thing too is, and this is what spoken word allows us, is that it allows us not to get stuck. So I am a probably small c conservative in the sense that I work within institutions. And I hope institutions survive and do well. I am a Methodist pastor. So, you know, I'm hoping that even with all the changes we need to do, I hope it does well. I work for and am a product of and am indebted to, quite literally, theological schools and education. So I believe in institutions. I believe that there's spaces for that. But I don't believe that we should get so stuck that it has to be done in a certain way. And I think looking at spoken word and looking at Black folk religious traditions um, allows us to be very creative and allows us to not be attached to things just because they were as they had been done. It allows us to be in this imaginative space where the only thing we care about is whether or not it brings forth liberation and whether or not it brings, as Cornel West says, justice, or what love looks like in public. And yeah, I think those are the things that we can experience. And more than just speaking to the head, I mean, many of us are encountered in mainline Protestant traditions. And so there's a lot of head work that we do. I think it's also important to be able to touch that part of us that is beyond, like, that operates with a different epistemology, a different way of knowing, a different way of experience. Healing that doesn't happen because you say the right words, but you feel it and you know it and you're able to act out on it. And yeah, that's what I'm hoping that informs my ministry, and what I'm hoping that as we continue to, as theological educations, as institutions, as denominations, or as people who are not connected to church in any way, that we are building indeed and empowering spiritually rooted leaders to do that work because the world needs it.
Well, Dr. Evans, thank you so much for sharing your work with us today and inspiring us.
Thank you.
Many, many claps.
Oh. Thank you. It is. Well, it is indeed my pleasure. I want to thank you for giving me the space to be able to share and kind of work. Sometimes you don't even know, you don't know things until you're have the space to kind of work it out in your own head. So I want to thank you for being such a beautiful container and a mirror by which to be able to share this moment. Thank you.
We'll continue in worship with our song of response. You are my hiding place.
My hiding place.
Beloveds, it's the time in our worship where we share with one another the work that we do beyond this space. So I welcome your announcements for the good of the community.
We have a lavender lunch today at 12:15 with PSR alum Rowan Queethan, who will be speaking on From Seminary to Student Affairs. So I'll put the Zoom link in the chat box and hope you can join us for our third lavender lunch this year.
First of all, welcome Mahsea to this setting again. To hear you preach, it is awesome to have you back. So thank you for creating that space, for your partnership in so many different ways with our work. And so you make us proud to have had just even a small part in the formation of your ministry and work. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for a wonderful worship. Thank you, Bex, for your beautiful music as well, and others. Just a gratitude for yesterday's meeting with the Board of Trustees and everyone's participation that was able to join us for that. And a reminder, we have an all-school meeting next Tuesday that will give us an opportunity to share a little bit of the conversations of the board as well. Everyone should have received a copy of the docket so you have a sense of the kinds of conversations the board is engaged in, particularly our commitments around anti-racism and the focus that we are placing for the next 3 years of our work together strategically. And so we'll share some of that, what we're looking ahead for next semester as we continue to respond to COVID-19 and its implications for us, and the opportunities that it has brought to broaden our reach as an institution, as well as an opportunity to discuss further our commitments around different understanding of what community safety is about. So you'll see information about that in your emails, but that will be next Tuesday after chapel. Thanks.
Thank you. Maggie, I saw you unmute. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, it's the so tomorrow, early evening, late afternoon, whatever you'd best describe the time about 5 p.m. as, be having a small prayer service over Zoom. It's kind of the first of this year's efforts of smaller worship settings outside of Tuesday Chapel. Be following the prayer service in the Christian tradition out of the New Zealand Book of Common Prayer, and will be, and that's kind of the gist of it. Also, please get in touch with me or Dr. Fenema regarding any ideas you might have for other non-Tuesday worship opportunities that we could possibly do every other week. You know, found poetry sessions, song circles, meditation, whatever you'd like.
Thanks, Maggie.
Yeah.
I also wanted to mention that next week we will be hosting some events as part of a Community Preparedness Week, getting us ready for whatever will come, especially with the election in the United States just around the corner. So you'll have the opportunity on Tuesday during chapel to have a sacred conversation about what is safety. On Wednesday and other points during the week, we're partnering with the Blackout Collective to do de-escalation trainings that will be available. And then on Thursday, our contextual thinking class is going to have an open class with a guest to talk about interconnectivity. And finally, on Friday, there will be an opportunity for a workshop on fostering spiritual resilience during turbulent times. So there are lots of opportunities to kind of bolster our skills and to think about how we can be prepared for whatever is called from us by these days as we approach especially the election, but these days in general. And there will be a flyer that will be out with more details about how to sign up for those events.
Yes. So thank you so much for that. Looking forward to being a part of that week. We also want to let you know that tomorrow is the birthday of someone who is so special to our community, for Andrew Barnes Jameson. So if you could just salute him, he's turning 33 tomorrow. And we just appreciate you so much, what you bring to the life, not only of Chapel, but just to the life of City of Refuge and just to our lives. We love and salute you, Andrew. So, and I think we may have one other Capser Council announcement. Am I correct? Let me just double check. Sarah may not have gotten my message. So Capser Council will be meeting every other Friday at 1 p.m. We have a meeting coming up this Friday. Folks are invited to come. It's an open meeting. So that's your leadership council and can come and see what we're doing, what we're planning, and bring ideas and insights to that. And Mahsea, it's so good to see and hear you. Thank you so much for that living word today.
Thank you. Let us join our hearts and voices in singing our closing song, Nearer to the Heart of God.
There is a place of quiet rest near to the heart of God, a place where we are welcome guests, near to the heart of God. Oh, with the cleft I'm covered, safe in the heart of God. Us who wait before you, near to the heart of God. There is a place of comfort sweet, near to the heart of God. A place where we adore meet, near to the heart of God. With the cleft I'm covered, safe in the heart of God. Us who wait before you, near to the heart of God. There is a place of holy peace, near to the heart of God, a place where all is joy and peace, near to the heart of God. With the cleft I'm covered, safe in the heart of God. Hold us wait before you, near to the heart of God.
So now as we leave from here, we leave with a sense of gratitude within our hearts, affirming that you are our God and we are your people. As we leave, may we be ever more ready and renewed to be your agents of hope in this world. And may we be avatars of your gospel message, the gospel of justice and joy, love and liberation. May we go now and your grace and the peace that surpasses all understanding. Amen.
Thank you, everyone.
Blessings, y'all. Go in peace through the rest of this day.
Peace, peace.
Thanks, Maggie.
Lizanne.
Dr. Fenema, I couldn't get all the details.